but protesters hadn't decided to stop him. Watch. Well, students at the $61,000 per year college called Murray a sexist, anti-gay white supremacist, and otherwise screeched until administrators finally canceled the event because they had to. Protesters later jumped on Murray's car in an attempt to keep him from leaving campus safely. They also injured a professor who was escorting him, forcing her to make a brief stay to the hospital. Well, Carolyn Rouse is an anthropology professor at Princeton University. When Murray spoke at Princeton last year, she led students and faculty in a walkout of that event. Professor Rouse joins us now. Professor, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
I've read a lot of the criticism of Charles Murray, with whose work I'm pretty familiar, and they don't bear much resemblance to what Charles Murray has actually written. And so I just want you to put a fine point on your complaints about Charles Murray. Why is he beyond the pale? Why should he not be allowed to speak?
Well, I'm not sure what you're referring to. What are you referring to in terms of his work?
Well, a couple of things. At Middlebury, he was denounced as anti-gay. He's not in any sense anti-gay that I know of. He was a proponent of gay marriage. He was also denounced by a lot of people, including you, as a purveyor of racial pseudoscience. And whatever you think of his ideas, I don't think anyone would denounce them as pseudoscience, considering the book that you're referring to was written by him and Dick Herrnstein, a Harvard professor, a real scientist. So I wonder what you're talking about exactly.
You mean you think that black people have lower IQs than white people?
No, I think that the bulk of Charles Murray's scholarship has nothing to do with race at all. And I'm wondering, to be totally blunt with you, Professor, if you've read his books.
Yes.
Which ones did you read?
The first one I read was Losing Ground in college.
Right.
And
did you read?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I beg your pardon. Go ahead.
Well, that was a really interesting book for me because the argument that black people were culturally dysfunctional and had all of these behaviors that were incompatible with democracy and capitalism to be fascinating but completely false or fake news.
Okay.
Given that I know the black community well.
Right.
So yes,
I read the book too.
That was my wake up.
I don't remember him making the case that black people were somehow unable to live in a democracy. Did you read The Bell Curve?
I read parts of The Bell Curve, yes.
Okay, but not the entire Bell Curve.
No, I didn't read the entire Bell Curve, and I read the critiques of the Bell Curve as well.
Okay.
But are you know, the
So
Southern Poverty Law Center has a dossier on him. I don't want to debate whether or not he's made claims about the sort of the degeneracy of black people and poor whites. It's just a fact. So if you want to talk about freedom of speech and his right to speak freely, I think that makes sense. But what he's written is out there for the public, and I don't think that we need to debate that.
Well, but that's kind of your point, is that it's known and we don't need to debate it, but you've already conceded that his central work, The Bell Curve, you haven't actually read. You've read critiques of it, you read part of it, but you haven't read the book. And instead you point to the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is a political organization. I'm just saying, shouldn't you take the scholarship seriously, and then if you disagree, explain why? You
know what? There's a black man who wrote about how people with more melanin are more intelligent. Do I need to read this work? Do I need to invite this person to Princeton to speak because he's written about how black people are more intelligent than white people? Do I need to waste my time? Do I need to waste your time? Do I need to waste the institution's resources because he said it? Just because somebody says something doesn't mean I need to be wasting my time reading every word they've written. I have other things in my life to do. They're more positive and constructive and more interesting scholarship out there.
Oh, sure, but one of the things that you're spending your time doing is trying to prevent other people from expressing their views on the basis of incomplete knowledge.
Not at all. We didn't at all. We let him speak. We didn't shout him out. We literally just walked out the door before he spoke.
But don't you think, I guess the larger point here, and it seems like it would appeal to you as an academic, is that if you disagree with the point someone is making, you should understand exactly what it is they're saying, because the Bell Curve was not primarily about race at all.
Do you know that?
And
how much energy we black scholars and people who worked on African American have had to spend so much time challenging racist scholarship and not enough time doing positive work. At some point, we have to stop paying attention to this. Just because somebody says something and they're wealthy and privileged doesn't mean that we all need to go running and accept it as good scholarship or treat it as legitimate. There's a lot of bad scholarship out there.
But
his work is bad scholarship.
But you don't know what it is because you haven't read it. You haven't read the entire book, which was not about race except for a small section of it. And it was actually an important book. So I would think you'd want to grapple with the ideas in there, but you don't. And I wonder why.
Do you know how many important books I bet you haven't read?
Many. I'm not weighing in on them in the way that you are.
Yes.
You're passing judgment on something you don't understand, and that's what bothers me.
You said I don't understand it? I do.
That's correct. What's the thesis of the bell curve?
I do work in biological anthropology. There's absolutely no such thing as degeneracy of a certain population, which he claims based upon poor whites are degenerate, poor black people are degenerate. He has a thesis that these genes are floating in these populations and they're no longer able to take advantage of the freedoms and democracy that we have in this country. And so, therefore, you know,
having read the book, I think you're grossly mischaracterizing it. Grossly mischaracterizing it, and I'm surprised that if you're claiming you read the whole thing. But let me ask you the free speech part, which you brought up. Do you think that people have a right to say things that you find offensive? Do you agree with the Middlebury protesters?
Absolutely. Oh, do I agree with that? Well, those are two different things.
Well, if you're supporting shouting someone down, obviously you don't think people have a right to say what they think.
We never shouted Charles Murray down. He was allowed to speak. Our protest was about internally.
I'm sorry. Right.
So Tucker Carlson.
Yes, sir.
We have a limited pool of resources at Princeton.
Right.
I don't think we need to be spending money on this. There are many, and your audience knows this, many lower middle class white people, many working class white who would love to get an education. Let's spend that money on helping them go to school, right? That's what we need to spend that money on, not on constantly sort of giving money and resources to scholars who already we know their scholarship just doesn't pass the medal. So,
yeah, by the way, you're overstating the degree which there's a consensus on that. I think a lot of serious people regard Charles Murray as serious. But let's get to the Middlebury protest. Do you think it's okay for people to prevent a speaker from speaking because they disagree with him?
No, that's why we didn't do that.
Okay.
They're allowed to speak, but we do not want our institutional resources going towards, for instance, somebody who claims that people with more melanin are more intelligent. We don't want that kind of stuff in our university.
Charles Murray didn't claim that. He didn't make that claim.
No, but there are people who do. That's my point.
Okay.
His work is as absurd to me as that.
Yeah. Well, I would challenge you to read it and then pass an informed judgment on it. I think that might be more effective. We're out of time. Professor, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Earlier this week, Mike Rowe came here and told us this.
5.6 million jobs exist right now as we're talking. 5.6 million jobs, 75% of which don't require a four-year degree.
Up next, we'll welcome the founder of an organization that is helping kids skip college and go straight into skilled, maybe even excellent jobs. You may not have heard of this before. It could change everything.
Watched and most trusted weekend voices every Saturday on the Fox News Channel.
Well, the price of college continues to rise year after year, faster than any other commonly used commodity in American life, and far faster than the official inflation rate. Even at public universities, tuition is now routinely above 10 grand a year. Don't even consider the most expensive private schools. It'll make you sick. It'll also put you in debt. Well, thankfully, some innovative minds see the situation and ask the obvious question, which is, what's the point of all this? Isaac Morehouse is the founder of Praxis. It's an organization that places young people in apprenticeships with tech startups without requiring them to attend college first. It's a really interesting idea, and Isaac Morehouse joins us now. Isaac, thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Tucker. Glad to be here.
So why'd you do this? What was the need you wanted to meet with Praxis?
You know, I had spent a lot of time working with young people, high school students, college students, and seeing them graduate and say, I've got all this debt, but I can't find, there are no jobs. And then I started working with, I switched jobs, this was before I launched Praxis. I started working with a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners. And I'm hearing them say, I'm hiring all the time. I just can't find good talent. And I thought, okay, something is amiss here. People are spending all this time, 5 years on average, thousands of dollars, sometimes six figures, and they're coming out no better prepared to go in and create value and to get a job than they were when they went in.
Exactly.
In fact, I would argue sometimes they come out worse because they pick up some habits and mindsets that are really antithetical.
You just stopped right there. That is totally true, and nobody ever says it. College helps a lot of people, also destroys some people. That's real.
Absolutely. I mean, we see that all the time. Actually, at Praxis, when people get into the program, if they've had some college especially, we joke about we have sort of a de-schooling process because the mindset of obey the rules, follow procedures, chase credentials, chase grades, and wait to be told what to do, and you'll be handed this magical ticket to a job. It's just not true. I mean, if you stand in line with your resume and says, look, I have a degree, hand me a job, whether or not you have a degree, you need more than that today. But the good news is it's easier than ever to do more than that, to demonstrate your ability to create value, to embark on projects and things that, you can show, not just trust this degree, but here's what I've done, here's what I've built. And that's really what we're all about, is trying to place people in a position where they can learn by doing.
So you're, in effect, a placement firm for people who are bypassing college and want to go right into the workplace. Is that right?
It's a little bit more than that. Actually, it's a lot more than that. But that is definitely a key part of it. So the program, we have a 3-month boot camp where if you've got the raw drive, if you've got the work ethic, I call it the sleep in your car test. There are people who are willing to sleep in their car to get what they want in life, and those who aren't. If you've got that, the skills can be gained. You can learn those relatively quickly if you have that drive. So we help prepare our participants with this professional boot camp. We help them build a personal website. We help them gain some specific skills that are going to be valuable for some of our business partners. And then we place them in a paid apprenticeship. They're getting regular coaching. There's a curriculum along with Praxis and a whole community. And it's really about a mindset that no one's going to give me anything. No one's going to give me a job.
Right.
No one's going to give me job security. I've got to create that for myself. Whether or not I actually start a business, I have to think entrepreneurially. And I'm telling you, there is more opportunity than ever out there today. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't see it. They just see fear, and they're worried, and they're looking for some guarantee, so they're sinking themselves into debt, and they don't have to.
So quickly, by the way, we're putting the explanation of your company and your website on our Facebook page, so for our viewers who want to know more. But if I've got kids and they're thinking about whether or not to go to college, I could call you up with some assurance that that child will wind up in a decent job?
Absolutely. I mean, if you get into the program, and again, what we look for is that drive and that ambition, the work ethic. If you get in, once we place you in an apprenticeship, you're guaranteed to get a job at the end of the program. So absolutely. I mean, and that's why we have to screen for quality people, but also we're there to coach and help. Our advisors work with participants throughout their apprenticeship and beforehand to guarantee that they will succeed in those roles. And the businesses we work with, they love us. I mean, they come back and they say, give us more of these people. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. I'm just glad that out of a country of 330 million people, someone is thinking for himself in an original way. Good for you.
I mean, it almost seems so obvious in some ways, this apprenticeship concept of learning by working with people who are doing, but yet we've got this weird, bizarre mentality where people are paying tons of money to be kept out of the real world. And then all of a sudden they graduate and being taught by people, most of whom have never really worked in the business world. It's kind of crazy. It's kind of backwards. So, and I mean, the idea of America itself is, we're a country of hustlers, grinders, innovators, crazy people who aren't willing to take well enough alone. And that mindset kind of gets beat out of you in the school process. So we're trying to just tell people, hey, get out of the classroom, and we'll put you into a business, and you can learn. Get your feet wet. Learn. Get forged in the fire.
I'm going to have to stop this interview because I'm going to start sucking up to you in an embarrassing way because I love this idea just so much.
Well, I'm a talker too. I chat a lot.
No, I love it. I love every part of it. Isaac, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Well, the mayor of an American town on the Mexican border is demanding an investigation after his city was deluged with 140 million gallons of Mexican mierda. Sergey Dedina of Imperial Beach, California, it's in San Diego County, says Mexico deliberately dumped raw sewage into the Tijuana River, where it then flowed into this country, and didn't bother telling anybody in America for 17 days. That untreated sewage subsequently washed up on the town's beaches, and residents complained, of course, about the rank odor. The International Boundary and Water Commission has said it will, of course, look into the spill. When Mexico sends us its raw sewage, it's not sending its best. Well, up next, a specter is haunting the Trump administration, the specter of the Obama administration. We'll talk to one reporter who says the press are deliberately letting members of the previous White House sabotage the new one. He'll explain what he means. Stay tuned.